Hey, how's it going and welcome to another video. So a bit ago, Byleth was of course revealed for Smash. Everybody was happy and there was no discourse at all. None whatsoever, only ever happiness on the internet. But either way, we also learned about the upcoming DLC involving the Ashen Wolves house. And as it turns out, my man Linhardt is going to be appearing as one of the playable characters. This of course pleased me greatly since Linhardt is my favorite Three Houses character, as well as one of my favorite Fire Emblem characters in general. So I figured now is a pretty great time to talk about him. Throughout this video I'm going to be talking about several of his supports to give some analysis of his character, and explain why I love this guy so much. Linhardt is a man controlled by two driving forces: passion and laziness. Passion for the things that excite him, with the great interest of his life being crests. He has dedicated his heart and soul to his research on the subject, and it's not an exaggeration to say they're what keeps him going. Then on the other hand, there's his laziness. That unending desire to just not do anything. For Linhardt, if it doesn't interest him, then it's really not worth his time. But either way, I think these two traits working in unison is what makes him such an enjoyable and relatable character. They're traits and behaviors that pretty much everybody has. It's very easy to jump into his shoes and think, yeah man, I've been there. We're not all from noble families, not all of us have terrible social anxiety, and I'm pretty sure nobody here watching has had a loved one killed in the tragedy of Dusker. But all of us have something we're perhaps a bit obsessed with. Probably not crests, but maybe a character or an anime series or a video game. That feeling of excitement and joy that fills you whenever you talk about your favorite thing is a universal one. So it's naturally very easy to relate to Linhardt when he starts talking about his beloved crests. Then on the total opposite end of the spectrum is his laziness. That sensation of just not caring. That feeling when you're stuck in class or at work and literally anything else would be more exciting. There's also that nagging feeling you get from that little lobe in your brain that tells you to go, take a nap. As much as we're all the excited and interested Lin, just as often we're him but wearing an "I really wish I weren't here right now" button. But that really is the human experience in a very condensed form. You're most often either bored or excited, and Lin has both of these feelings in spades, as we'll see in some of his supports. His support with Edelgard is a great encapsulation of Lin's character and perspective on things, as well as how his carefree outlook clashes with Edel's need for structure. The support begins with Edelgard tracking him down for skipping class, and Lin of course begins to talk a bit about the wonderful world of crests. As Lin puts it, crest research is its own reward, and this is where we see how their outlooks on life vastly differ. To Edelgard, practicality is everything, and doing things that aren't directly beneficial to some end goal are just a waste of time. It's not that she disapproves of crest research, far from it, but from her point of view, the obvious question to be asked is, but what is the point in doing this? For Linhardt, there isn't necessarily a point. His own enjoyment of the subject and knowledge gained are the benefit. It's sort of like how your parents probably ask you, what's the point in those video games you play? I'm sure we've all heard the "those games aren't gonna help you get a job" speech, and then in the back of your mind you think, it's fun, that's why. Go away. Linhardt basically has that same conversation with Edelgard, but her attempted mommying of him doesn't end there, and in the B support her harassment continues. After a while, Lin finally blows a bit of a gasket and shows a truly frustrated side to his personality. And he straight up calls her an awful nuisance. Imagine having the balls to tell a future emperor how annoying they are straight to their face. What a Chad. But anyways, he also brings up an excellent point about overbearing leaders. And it's a very fine line to try and walk. Be too lax and your subordinates will walk all over you, but be too strict and you often end up demoralizing people. This exchange is extremely relatable. I've had teachers and bosses that have been super overbearing, and it kinda kills your motivation to do anything. Edelgard relents, and in the A support she returns with a new proposition, a crest research institution led by Linhardt. He can research whatever, and some other guy will find a practical way to make use of his findings. Lin is interested, but points out the obvious flaw in the idea. An institute under his control will most likely just fail completely. Even if given the freedom to just do whatever, that still comes with the responsibility of managing other people, and it would just become another job at that point. Edelgard holds back on the idea until the A+ support, where she makes the institute way more appealing for Linhardt and only Linhardt. She would provide food, clothing, and housing, as well as unlimited time off but no actual payment. So much about this idea is bizarre. It's basically just a big homeless shelter for crest researchers. Like, nothing about this is a job. They don't actually have to work, they get unlimited time off, and probably worst of all, they're forced to give up their land ownership rights to join. It's a super weird idea, something 99% of people wouldn't be interested in, but weird is right up Linhardt's alley, as he happily accepts the proposal. And it honestly seems like the ideal life for him. No worries about deadlines, getting bossed around, he can sleep the day away and just indulge in his crest research forever. It's a good support, despite this Crest Institute idea being weird as shit, but it does a good job showing both characters' perspectives on each other, and there's ultimately a happy resolution that the two are content with. His support with Dorothea shows a new side to Linhardt, and it's one of the few times where he's shown being truly vulnerable. It begins with Dorothea commenting on how nobles would look down on behavior like napping in public, to which Lyn responds by giving his perspective on the subject of nobility. Unlike Ferdinand or Lorenz, who are noble and proud, Lyn is noble and, doesn't care at all. To him, noble pride is a dumb concept. And he even offers up a rare example of Lyn thinking from a purely practical standpoint. To him, pride is a pointless and oftentimes actively disruptive character trait, stating how his father's pride causes a lot of issues for the Ministry of Domestic Affairs. Dorothea, however, thinks differently, saying that in order to lead, you must have at least some level of pride. Or to put it another way, self-confidence. After all, if you don't believe in your own ability to lead, then why should others follow you? The rank ends with neither character making much progress as Lyn decides that it's nap time. In the next rank, a group of soldiers start gossiping about Dorothea, and Lyn gives the brilliant suggestion of just ignoring it. Eat a meal and just don't think about it, but it's obviously not that simple. Although Lyn says he's been the target of gossip, it would absolutely be a different type of gossip. For Lyn, it would probably go something along the lines of, man, the Minister of Domestic Affairs kid is lazy and kind of weird. But let's stop talking about that now, because his dad is a very powerful man. On the other hand, Dorothea would be the target of all sorts of nasty rumors about how a commoner got to her place at the monastery, and presumptions about her character and sense of morals. This insecurity about her place in society is one of her biggest worries, and it's not something she can simply not think about. The B+ support has some juicy stuff in it, starting with Dorothea apologizing for how she acted in the previous conversation, and confides in Lyn about some of her insecurities. For Dorothea, the reality is that she can't deny many of the things others gossip about. She did, in a sense, sweet-talk her way into the monastery, and it bothers her greatly. Lyn once again gives the same nonchalant advice, just don't think about it. But from Dorothea's perspective, that's the same as just running away and not facing reality. Although it's not immediate, this line seems to have a grave effect on Lyn's perception of himself and his own actions. Let me ask you a bit of a philosophical question. Is it better to never really try and thus never really fail? Or is it better to truly give your all with the risk of knowing that effort might be totally wasted? Would you rather stay in the comfort of the familiar, or possibly have a bad experience with the unknown? Life is full of these risk versus reward questions, and it's obviously something Linhardt started thinking about after his chat with Dorothea. In their A support, he returns to confess a major character flaw of his. In some ways, his laziness is much more than just trying to avoid work. It's a way of avoiding his fears. Rather than just doing what needs to be done, he does what many of us do. He puts it aside and thinks, I'll get around to it. But as he puts it, one of the effects of running away is that eventually one runs out of places to run to. Avoiding one problem leads to another, which leads to another, and one day you find yourself with nowhere left to run. It's a sadly relatable part of his character, which I'm sure many of us, especially college students, deal with every day. That constant back and forth between wondering if you should work or just enjoy yourself. For many of us, including Linhardt, that second option is always more appealing, despite knowing how it's gonna bite us in the ass later. This is a great support between these two characters as we learn more about both of them, their perspectives on subjects like pride, escapism, and others' perceptions of them. It also ends on a positive note, with Lyn being able to confess an insecurity of his, and Dorothea seeming to find some sort of new attraction to his weird behavior. The greatest interest of Linhardt's life are the ever-so-contentious crests, the genetic gifts from the goddess which are a focal point of the setting. For Lyn, the research and understanding of these crests are his reason for continuing on, and naturally many of his supports revolve around characters who possess them, as well as the lengths he's willing to go to in order to learn more. For Linhardt, nothing could be more interesting than somebody who completely defies the known rules of crests. That of course means somebody with 2 of them. His support with Lysithea begins with the dastardly and cunning Lyn tricking her into admitting that she has 2 crests, and he proceeds to basically treat her like a lab animal. This is an example of Linhardt allowing his interests to overtake his sense of decency, and although he can be sarcastic, lazy, and even rude, he always remembers to at least treat people like people. He even, ironically, comments on how she's the one being rude for not answering all of his invasive questions. In the following rank, he continues his interrogation, seemingly having not learned his lesson the first time, but he brings up the possibility of removing one of the crests. However, rather than just letting the suggestion simmer in Lysithea's mind, Linhardt pretty much immediately goes, "But no, don't get rid of one, it's too cool." Lysithea of course snaps, saying he has no empathy, and in this instance she's pretty correct. In this rank, it seems as if Lyn is trying to edge his way towards explaining the pros and cons of removing one of the crests, but the scientist in him takes over and pretty much only wants to talk about how sick, cool, and radical having 2 crests is. Of course, Linhardt has no way of knowing the hardship Lysithea has been through, but after seeing her react to the topic so negatively the first time, he probably should have used more common sense. In the final rank, Lyn comes up with this really goofy but also very in-character analogy to try and explain Lysithea's situation. He provides the example of there being 2 pastries representing her crest. They are both delicious, however, if eaten together, they will be fatal. This of course leaves several options on the table. She can either try one, try both, or eat neither of them. It's a tough situation for both characters. On one hand, this entire situation is basically Linhardt's dream. A totally unique specimen to study who could possibly change the field of crestology forever. But if she keeps both of the crests, it's extremely likely she will die an early death. What would be the best course of action? Keeping both crests with all the benefits and hardships that it brings? Keeping just one and enjoying its benefits while losing the other? Or would you just reject both of them, having to deal with neither the benefits nor the hardships of either option? It's a complicated situation and a complicated character relationship. But at the end of it, Linhardt decides he'll support Lysithea no matter what she decides to do. It's a great support that reveals a lot about both characters. And it also shows that even though Linhardt can temporarily lose sight of his conscience for his research, at the end of the day there are boundaries he won't cross, and he cares vastly more about his friends than crests. Another aspect of Linhardt's character that I find extremely appealing is his intelligence. Or maybe it's better to describe it as his perceptiveness. I find oftentimes in media, intelligence is presented as how much a character knows, rather than their ability to figure out new information and discern what's happening around them. Three Houses fortunately gets this right, with characters such as Linhardt, Sylvain, Seteth, and Claude being great examples of people I would consider to be very smart. And that comes without the game shoving down your throat how smart they are. They're self-aware about what's happening in the world, making discoveries about themselves, and drawing their own conclusions about things, rather than feeling like static actors stuck to the game's script. This is showcased in Linhardt's support with Flayn, and Lyn seems to have a bit of a theory about her true identity. It begins with Lyn stating some interesting similarities between Flayn and the legendary Saint Cethlein. They look similar, they both struggle with detailed work, they were both skilled with white magic, and this interrogation slowly starts to chip away at Flayn's facade of being just a young girl. Obviously, Linhardt is entirely correct in his assumption. Flayn and Cethlein are in fact the same person, although he probably doesn't realize the danger in even stating this hypothesis out loud. Flayn, as well as Rhea and Seteth, are high priority targets for the slithery boys, and anything that could arouse suspicion is bad news for them. So you can imagine the absolute shitstorm that would emerge if, Linhardt went up to Seteth and went, "Hey man, are you Saint Keyhole?" In their B support, his line of questioning continues and shifts the topic towards her crest. The major crest of Saint Cethlein, which is an extremely elusive type. And as it were, Linhardt actually has a minor crest of Cethlein, meaning there's almost certainly a genetic relationship between the two. I mean, just look at the hair. This is apparently impossible, however, as Cethlein was never married. This brings up the natural question of, okay, but how do other people have your minor crest then? But whatever. At this point, it would seem Lyn has definitely figured out something is going on, but opts to keep it to himself. It's debatable whether or not he truly figures out they're the same person, but at least from my perspective, Lyn did in fact figure it out, but decides it's really just not something worth making a fuss over. That doesn't mean he gives up, far from it, and instead decides his next course of action is to try and marry Flayn, and hopefully have a few crest babies with her. It's such an extreme jump in his course of action, but also makes a lot of sense. You can kind of imagine Lyn thinking, alright, she is most certainly Sethlene, that's one mystery solved, but what would happen if we had babies? It's a great support and one of my favorites since it showcases traits of these two characters very well. It's funny, interesting, and at times even a bit nerve-wracking, as you continue to wonder if Lyn has truly figured out her secret, or if he's just coming up with crackpot theories that happen to be right. Although crests are the dominant passion of his life, he also has an interest in heroic relics, which is where his support with Catherine comes in. He very bluntly asks her to borrow Thunderbrand, just to try and use it a bit, and it shows the rather insane lengths he's willing to go to for his own research. Catherine of course says there's no way in hell he'll be able to use it. Not only would it not work at all, it would probably end up turning him into a demonic beast. But Lyn doesn't seem to care. From this support, we learn how nonchalant he is about his own well-being, as he's totally willing to risk something arguably worse than death just to get an understanding of the relic. But the real juice is in the A support, which features a very interesting line of dialogue from Linhardt. Linhardt asks Catherine where Thunderbrand came from, to which she says, the goddess. Lyn then says that simple answer seems to be enough to satisfy most people. It's from the goddess, and thus people stop thinking about it. Lyn's views on the church seem to range from complete apathy to slight dislike, but this is basically his only support where his views on the church are elaborated on. For Linhardt, the common belief that relics and crests should just be accepted as from the goddess is totally antithetical to his scientific views. It breeds a culture of ignorance, and not investigating these things more thoroughly is slowing down progress. His blooming interest in relics and the goddess is super fascinating to me, and it's something I wish the game showed us more of. I can kind of imagine an older Linhardt having moved his research beyond the scope of crests, and gone to the logical next step, trying to understand the very nature of the goddess herself. Linhardt is also a man stuck in between two conflicting realities about his crest research, as well as his status in the army. In his support with Byleth, he elaborates on how much he detests fighting, and especially taking lives. He's ultimately living his life in pursuit of comfort and peace, and it's his dream to be able to just carry on day to day with no worries about much of anything. No deadlines, no schedules, nothing but relaxed days and his research. But that's not reality. Reality is war and the constant emergence of new problems. And as much as he'd like to try and fight it, his ideal world probably never will exist. There's also the subject of his crest research, and in the A support it dawns on him that there's a conflict of interest in wanting to pursue peace, while also furthering the advancement of crestology. Crests have historically been used as tools of destruction, with crests centered on subjects like healing being extremely uncommon. There's also the heroic relics, weapons of incredible power that can only be utilized with a crest. Although there are obviously exceptions, it's hard to deny that they were designed for one primary focus: war. This naturally goes against Linhardt's pacifistic views, since any research he does into the subject would probably end up indirectly being used for war. A discovery made about a particular crest or how to amplify its abilities would definitely be exploited by those in power. Lyn is stuck in a truly terrible position. The man who only wants a peaceful life is most interested in a subject that only seems to bring death, and it's a realization he'll sadly have to deal with for the rest of his life. Linhardt has a ton of great supports, and there's quite a few I didn't get to, but I ultimately wanted to paint a picture of his broader personality rather than examining every support he has. Linhardt is a surprisingly complicated person with a wide range of personality traits and flaws. He's intelligent, maybe even the smartest person at the academy, but he is also lazy, probably detrimentally so. He sometimes puts his own research above the feelings of others. And as shown in his support with Dorothea, there's even a cowardly side to his character. But these are all very human and relatable flaws. And as much as I enjoy seeing the positives of Linhardt, I can also look at his negatives and relate to the feeling. Life is exhausting, and boredom is a horrible sensation. But we all have something that makes it a little more tolerable. For Linhardt, it's of course crests. Solving the mysteries of these genetic gifts, not for a government or necessarily even for the advancement of science, but just because he thinks it's cool. Not everything in life has to be done for some arbitrary end goal like money or status. Just do it because it's fun and it makes you happy. Never lose sight of your passions, but not at the expense of other aspects of your life. Find that balance between work and play and you'll go far. Linhardt's great, absolutely my favorite Three Houses character, and one I'm really glad I was able to kinda attach myself to throughout the story. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time.